Hello, and welcome to this week's exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. My guest should be joining us momentarily. Um, so, we had a lot of very, I don't know, occasions to celebrate in the month of March. At Thorshof for their annual Ostara celebration, we performed the naming of a baby. We awarded the Folk Builder Excellence Award for the year 2024 to Folk Builder Tyler Bethay. We oathed in Folk Builder Nicholas Gunn of Eastern Washington, and I had the pleasure, and this is the first time we've done this in a little while, of ordaining two new Gothar to be priest and priestess of our Isir. Now Githya Heather Young of South Carolina and Gothi Jonathan Rock of Indiana. Gothi Rock will be joining us this evening, hopefully giving y'all a chance to talk to him, to get to know him a little bit, to get him to talk on some of the things he's got going on in the area and some things beneficial for our folk in general. So that's kind of the plan this evening. I would also like to, start the show by showing appreciation once again for a $30 donation from G.W. Farnsworth. Donates weekly to the program for quite some time now. Very generous donor. We appreciate you so much. Thank you. Anybody that would like to donate, runestone.org/donate. Or I guess just /donate. I guess while we're on that theme, the first thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit about our progress on paying off Njordsoff. I'm going to ramp up the fundraising push for it because we are gaining momentum. I am eager to get this all the way paid off so that we can look for Phrasehoff and get that happening. It is tantalizingly close now. 1 month ago, we owed $52,000 and change. Today, we owe $46,234. So I would love to see what progress can be made on that during the course of this program. It would be fantastic. But we are trying the best we can to keep that momentum going. This comes out now to $64 per AFA member would have the thing paid off immediately. But all that said, you guys have been extremely generous when it comes to this. For a church our size to pay off, it's been 2.5 years. We've been able to pay off $198,766 of this debt so far in that time. That is an enormous amount that we've been able to generate due to your guys' generosity. It is much appreciated, and it is a testament to our devotion towards Lord Njordur and running the last leg of that mile to fully get his Hoff in place and then to be able to move on to his son's Hoff. So thank you guys so much for your generosity. We appreciate you. So that's how we're doing on that project. Other top of the show things that I would like to discuss. So first, I would like to raise a glass in remembrance and in honoring Hauken Jarl, or Jarl Hauken, the hero of our folk that we are celebrating on today, his day of remembrance. He is a hero of, I believe, of the original stock of heroes that were honored with Days of Remembrance back, I believe, in the 1980s. We celebrate him for his loyalty and his steadfast insistence on living his life in troth to the Aesir, and for his time keeping the domains under his control loyal to the Aesir. So we celebrate him, a warrior, a leader, and a proud Asatru. But this is followed up this month, tomorrow, by a day of remembrance for John Ewell, also known as Stoba, who was one of the founders and driving forces of the Odinic Rite back when that organization was a vibrant force in bringing our folk back to troth with the Aesir. He lived a very interesting life that spanned very interesting times, and he put his energy towards restoring the bonds of our folk, of his countrymen, of Englishmen in general, or in specific, to troth to the Aesir and specifically to the Allfather. So we celebrate him, we honor him, we appreciate the work that he put in. Those two things are certainly of note. We, over the last little bit, we've added significantly to the number of heroes that we are honoring with Days of Remembrance. And we have a few more for you that we will talk about in the coming months. So I look forward to that. I guess the special endeavor to find the names and the stories of heroes that have not gotten their proper due and raising them to proper celebration, worship, and honor after they've passed is an important one to me personally, and has been something that I think has been very beneficial to the Asatru Folk Assembly and to us living up to the obligations of honor for those who paved the way for us to be where we're at. And something very near and dear to my heart. There's a number of other gentlemen. I say gentlemen, we do have some ladies, but of the upcoming crop, it's guys right now that we're talking about that we plan on honoring with their Days of Remembrance in the coming months. So I'm looking forward to talking about some of those with you as time moves forward. You can tell from my hemming and hawing, I'm trying to kill time waiting for Gothi Jonathan to join us and be able to speak with y'all. But I will start chipping away at some of these questions, and he can join when he is able. First up, and I kind of already alluded to some of this, but Sarah asks, she says, "Good evening, Osharry Gothi." Good evening, Sarah. And Gothi Rock. We have 2 remembrance days this week, Jarl Halkin today and Stoba tomorrow night. How will each of you be honoring these heroes? So I wish I had a big elaborate thing to discuss with you guys. Okay. First, going before the altar and pouring out a libation, lighting incense, and both praying and making offering to celebrate them, about them, in front of the Aesir is important, but also speaking and honoring to them is important. Speaking to them in appreciation and making offering is something that I plan to do. I would also like to, and it's challenging depending on the nature of the hero, explain, I don't know, tell the story of these guys in a way that is accessible and makes sense to my daughter. Those of you may not know, Aubrey is going to turn 5 next week. So I'm very excited about that. But it puts her in a spot where discussing some of the heroes can be a little bit abstract or more challenging. So trying to talk about them a little bit and get their name familiar to her and have something that she can kind of touchstones to remember these people is something that I'm endeavoring to do. So that's what I'm doing. Um, yeah, I'm not sure what John's doing. Perhaps he will have something to offer when he joins us. Something. So our next question comes from an email that was sent to vns@runestone.org. Remember, guys, that you are able to send questions at literally any time to vns@runestone.org, and we will get those. We will compile them, and we will answer them on the next available opportunity. So that's always a thing, and we'll get it out there. I know some people aren't able to ask questions live. I will get to his question, but again, in an attempt to kill time, just to let John get on, but I'll get to it in a second. The stuff that does need to get said. Guys, if you are listening to this and you enjoy it, like, share, subscribe, invite friends, family, randos, whatever you need to come check us out. Word of mouth is really important, especially in the world we live in. As far as getting our message out there, we can definitely use all of your voices in spreading the word. So please remember to do that wherever you're consuming this, if you're watching it as a video or if you are listening to it as a podcast. It comes out as a podcast typically on the Thursday, often the Thursday morning following this program. So this one should be up and ready for you tomorrow on Spotify, on Apple Music, on iHeartRadio, on all of the places. So Amazon Music as well. So yeah, check it out there if that's something you like to do. And also another thing I'd like to say, and then we'll get off the plugs and I will get into meat and taters here, whether the Gothi shows or not. We will get his takes when he does arrive. But if you are listening to this show, if you are a heterosexual white person, and if you desire to forge or perhaps reforge a relationship between yourself and the ICER, we would invite you to join us in the Asatru Folk Assembly. This is a really special time to be Asatru. It's a very special time to be involved in the AFA. We've got a lot of projects, a lot of dreams, a lot of things that we are working to make happen. And we're seeing beautiful changes in our life, in our community, in our AFA family every day. We would love for you to be a part of that. So if you're on the fence, now's the time. Take that first step and join the Asatru Folk Assembly. With that, I will get to the question that I mentioned we got on the email. Tyler asks, hey there, I imagine you talk to and counsel many people from different backgrounds who are interested in Asatru. How do you counsel and help people who are former or questioning Christians that are interested in Asatru, but still have lingering concerns from their old beliefs? For instance, how do you help them get past concerns about being wrong and facing eternal punishment from other gods? Thanks. So counseling is an interesting thing. When you counsel somebody, you want to make sure it's about them and not about you. But it might seem counterintuitive. One of your best tools in understanding how to counsel or to understanding relationships in general is you work from empathy by, you know, relating things internally to stuff that you've experienced and ways that you've felt. And I say that to say this: I know what that's like. I didn't um, I didn't abandon Christianity for Asatru. I left Christianity because it was bad, and then I found Asatru. So I get being scared of, well, what if I'm wrong? I appreciate the benefit I had in coming to it, not comparing and contrasting one to another and trying to see which one was true and which one wasn't true, but only knowing one and having to decide, even if this is true, this is bad and not honorable. If this is all there is, then I actively choose to be on the other side of it. And that was really scary. Because again, at that point, it wasn't like, what if I'm wrong? It's like, I am wrong, or I am in opposition to the omnipotent God of the Christians. Wow, that's scary. What do I do? Where does that leave me? But it also, I did not want to live a life of hypocrisy. And some of that was a, heroic, like, no, this is wrong, and I take a stand against it. But another, which this may sound silly, was almost a respectful of Jehovah, of, I'm not going to stand there and profess my loyalty and say that I believe things that I don't believe and try to somehow trick or con a God into believing my insincerity, in the hopes that I can hedge my bets in the afterlife. That's not a noble way to be, and it's insulting. It's not right to do to myself. It's not right to do to whatever deity I'm being dishonest with or towards. And so it was wrong. And very, very quickly after I left Christianity, I discovered Asatru, and I came home. But that was informative to me. Something that really has stood out to me was the stories of many of our heroes. Lots of our heroes, especially our early heroes, the events in their life that earned them that ascension and that spot with Remembrance Days is how they reacted in the face of the onslaught of Christianity. And there was immense pressure on these people, often at the point of their very lives, to abandon the Aesir and to become Christians. It is profoundly meaningful to me that their loyalty to the Aesir was so strong that many of them willingly faced death, or the high likelihood that ended in their death, because of that loyalty and because of their honor when it comes to that. And it sets an example that I want to be able to look these men in the eye across the veil, should I have the honor and the opportunity. And I can't look them in the eye if I wouldn't have that kind of loyalty and live nobly while in the presence of great men who have paid that price. So I think that helps out of, I don't know, just my dignity as a man of wanting to be worthy of being in the company of those people. I don't know. This is all dancing around the question. These are just things that occurred to me. Another thing on the subject, really specifically in the very first Asatru observance I celebrated, was the Day of Remembrance for King Radbod of Frisia. He had gotten worn down by the arguments. It wasn't a theological thing for him at that point. The overwhelming pressure was too much, and he was preparing to be baptized, and with him baptize his country. And at the last minute, he asked, okay, with all this stuff, but what about my ancestors? Where are they? What's going to happen to them? Because even with the debates and the intellectualizing and the propaganda of the foe, he still, in his very bones, felt loyalty to his kin and where he came from. And the priest said, oh, well, your ancestors, they were heathens, and they were devil worshipers, and they're going to burn in hell for eternity. And at that point, knowing that and being kind of intellectually convinced that might very well be the reality of it, he chose that he would rather spend eternity burning in hell with his noble ancestors than living in heaven with a parcel of beggars. And that meant a lot to me with how I came into the faith. And so that was the first observance that I celebrated. So this brings me to the real point of what you're asking. I don't try to beat them over the head with, oh, you're a coward if you don't do this. I don't think that's particularly effective. But I do try to appeal to them of the value in the eyes of the eye-seer of them showing courage. Doing anything great in life takes a measure of courage. We are very quick to talk about courage in the abstract, but when it comes to applying it in our lives, it's much harder when you realize that courage doesn't exist without consequence. If you take the easy stand, that may be the right thing to do sometimes, seldom is, but it might be. But it's not a courageous thing. It's only courageous when it's not the easy thing, when there is the potential of consequence. So choosing is one of the inherent traits of noble people and of Aryan men and women. The ability to make a choice and be proud of the choice you made. If the only thing keeping you involved in Christianity or pulling you back perhaps towards Christianity is, wait, what if I'm wrong? And will the Jewish God hurt me or punish me for betting wrong? That's not a noble way to live your life. That's not a way to look your ancestors in the face, to look yourself in the mirror, or to look your children in the face. If the values of Christianity are abhorrent to you, but the values of Asatru and of the Aesir appeal to you and speak to your soul, to knowingly live ignobly just in case Jehovah is watching you, I don't think a lot of people really think of it on that level. I think they react because it's scary. And I don't think that we do well to tell them it's not scary or it shouldn't be scary. That's the reality, and it is scary. Doing the right thing when it is scary, that's what earns the respect of the gods. It earns the respect of your ancestors. It earns the respect of those who know you. And I think every time any of us in our lives have approached a situation where we were scared, but we went through with the thing we knew was right anyway in the face of fear, on the other side of it, we were proud. On the other side of it, we held our heads higher, stuck our chests out more, and became better because of it. And I think that is the thing that I would urge them to do. And if they can't this time, then I'd urge them to come back and do that when they can. The combination of trying to urge them to be courageous, but also leaving the door open for them if they're not ready yet or if they can't yet, those are the kind of direction those calls go. And again, the particulars, the specifics, the person I'm talking to all go into that, but as a very, very broad and general thing, that's some of the way that I have counseled people who found themselves in that predicament. Some have shied away from it and returned to Christianity, and I've never heard from them again. Others were very thankful and stand today as my brothers and sisters in the Asatru Folk Assembly. So, it's not a foolproof answer, but it is one that has been very beneficial in a lot of circumstances. So I'm going to briefly see if I have any indication of what is going on with our guest and if we need to recruit a stand-in guest.
He's still trying.
He needs to try something different because it's not working.
I'm talking to him on the back end.
All right. So they're currently trying to figure something out. In the meantime, and this is where you will see the value of having a guest. So initially when I did these shows, I was doing them just me. And it wasn't on Victory Never Sleeps. It was my monthly, forget what they were called, but monthly I would get on here and do a live where I would answer questions and I would talk to folks. And I really loved doing that. But yeah, so in doing that, I had the luxury of being able to, when my guests, so not doing that. If you would have seen me do that, you would have noticed all of the awkward pauses. Now I have the luxury of being able to do the little look on the side, look in the chat room, look for any communication from my amazing producer, Nick, while my guest is talking. Now I've got to kind of awkwardly do some of those things while there's dead air or there's me babbling and losing my place as I check them. But working on it. Our next situation. So trying to find one that's not John specific. Cool. So Rachel asks, could you please, here he comes. Anyways, it's very dark over there, John. So I'm going to ask this question while he gets his lighting set up. Could you please illuminate some, ironic, so could you please illuminate some recent nomenclature changes? What is the relationship of Ostara to Austra and Hexanacht to Nornanacht? So absolutely. We are still not done with little changes here and there, but what we have been doing over time, and this is a meta thing over the course of years. We've talked about how Asatru is a living faith, and we want to always be doing our very best to get it right. We also know that no matter how hard we try to get it right, we will never get it perfect. But we want to always trend closer and closer and closer and closer to that perfection. We always want to strive for that perfection. I've often said on here that, from beyond the veil, when I look back and see, All's Here You Gothi number 5 or number 6, I really hope that they are doing this so much better than I am, so much better than we are today. I hope they have advanced in ways that we haven't even thought of. I hope that through that amount of time of the gift cycle, they have come to know the ICER better and build those relationships full of victory and revelations and dreams manifesting before them in ways we couldn't even conceive of. We put them on that course and propel them towards that by doing the very best today that we can to get stuff right. So when we look at the Asatru Folk Assembly's holidays, we had a collection of Swedish, Norwegian, German, Anglo-Saxon, modern English, and Icelandic names. What we've talked about in the, or what I wrote about in the Asatru Trúlagmál is we very intentionally are choosing to utilize Old Norse nomenclature when doing naming conventions, when talking about the elements of our lore, the elements of our metaphysics, and the particular workings of the Asatru Folk Assembly as a church. And we do this for a couple of reasons. So this is kind of a meta thing, and if my answer seems meandering, please let me know if I can clarify, but I think that there's not a right way to do it without some of the side pieces. I've also mentioned how the more your life is cohesive and the more all of the pieces fit and synergize with one another, the better everything works. The more whole, the more hale, as our ancestors might have said, your life, your person, and your experience in the world is. I think that's true with many things. So to do that, rather than have, when I say eclectic, I don't mean eclectic in a, global diversity sense, but I mean eclectic in a trying to piece fragmentary things together over the course of centuries and over the course of thousands upon thousands of square miles. We have a strange labyrinth to find our way towards the best way of doing things. So what I've sought to do is to try to bring those things back into a system that's unified with the vast majority of our corpus of lore, to bring things together in a way that's unified in conception. One of the things that happens when we use many different words from a variety of Aryan languages is we have an awkward overlap of meaning. We'll have two words that mean the same thing and are based off the same root, but that we've kind of developed subtle differences in, and it causes some confusion. So the effort's been made to put our official, our ecclesiastical language into Old Norse, or to just use the common English. And I say English, the common lingua franca of wherever you are. If you are a Spaniard consuming this, then, the way to do it there would be Spanish or Old Norse. The way to do it here in the United States is English, or referring to the terms, the names of the people from the lore, and the names of our holy observances in the Old Norse. So it brings us to a number of our holidays are already that or very close. So some of them, there's no change at all to the nomenclature of them. But some of them there are. So to take you through the course of the year, Thorablot is Thorablot. It's an Icelandic holiday. It is the same as it would have been in the original Old Norse for the same reasons. No change to that one. Biggest one you might notice is in February, Charming of the Plow. So there's been a long-standing back and forth in Asatru between referring to this celebration as disting, which is a modern Swedish word, or as Charming of the Plow. And for similar reasons, this was always one of the most important celebrations of the year for our ancestors. In Sweden, this was a time where Asatru from all around would go to Uppsala and make this one of their most important festivals where they all came together and honored the changing of the season, of the waking up of the land, and of the enchantment of the goddesses, of the Asynjur. This was celebrated in Denmark by the charming of the plow, by charming implements of farming and of breaking open the earth and making way for fertility, of the tradition of digging the first furrow ceremonially. There's no conflict here, and it's celebrated the same way, but we want to, the naming that we're going to use going forward is Disathing. And Disathing is the word that disting comes from. You'll notice the similarity. And it means the thing or the assembly of the Disir. It's important to realize, like so many of the terms when we refer to our the spiritual, the metaphysical nature of what we do, there's some overlap. Disir are certainly our deified female ancestors, but as a term, they also mean the goddesses. So this is the assembly of the goddesses. The idea is our goddesses coming together and preparing us, preparing the implements of work for the year, preparing the land for that implementation of labor, preparing and caring for the men who go out into the fields, preparing for the feminine, preparing and celebrating, decorating, and charming the masculine, that we might go out and work our will in the world. And it's really kind of a beautiful thing that way. And I think this adds an element that's long been missing to the celebration. And it brings the naming back in line with, this is quite literally what our ancestors in the period of our, the lore that's come to us, this is what they called this particular observance. So that's why we're doing that. That is followed in, and this is directly one of the questions, in March by Ostara. So up until and including last month, and these names, you will notice them as the years progress. Nobody's doing it wrong if you call them, the things we called them last year, or the things you traditionally call them. This isn't because we've been doing things wrong. This is because we're trying to increasingly do things a little bit more right. And one of the things is, Ostara is a German word to celebrate our spring dawn goddess. The Old English celebrated her under the name of Eostra. Continentally, or as it's come down over the years, literally the word Easter. Phonetically, you'll notice that some will bring up, oh, you're doing it wrong because we don't see her name attested in the Old Norse sources. And that's correct, we don't. But we also do know that she exists. We do know that she's an extremely important goddess amongst our folk. And we also know that we have actively engaged in the gift cycle with her, and she has faithfully done her part in that gift cycle over the years. So it's inconceivable for us to cut her out or to not celebrate this, one of the most important holidays of our ancestral faith. The fact so much that when Christianity overtook Europe, they couldn't even affect the name of this holiday. And it comes down to us, basically unaltered in the Easter that the Christians celebrate without fully understanding where it comes from. In each of those cases, it is the local language's word for East, but not just East. And I'm sure there is a technical language term for this, but it's a combination of East and pretty girl name. So I'm trying to think of an example, and it would be something silly and stupid, but if we were to take the modern name for something in English and you add a female suffix to it. And so that's basically what is being done in this case. You will notice it sounds almost identical. There's a reason for that. That's why this sounds the way it does in our languages. It is the Old Norse word for east. And if east was said in the feminine, the name Austra. So that's why that's occurring. There is no difference. It is the same goddess. It is just using the mother tongue of our lore. You'll notice that following in April with Hexennacht. So for the longest, and I should also note, there's many times over. Sorry, it's easy to get distracted because there's a lot of pieces on it. So with Hexennacht, for a long time, we celebrated this under the name of Walpurgisnacht, as many of you who've been around Asatru for a long time might be aware. But that's always made me very uncomfortable, and it was important to me to change that. Walpurgisnacht, naming-wise, is the eve of the Christian feast day of Saint Walpurga, or Walpurgis. And we don't want to name our stuff after their saints. We don't want to name anything we do after someone else or some other group of people's conception of us. It's the reason that we refer to ourselves as Asatru and not as pagan or as heathen. Those are names applied to us by our enemies to denigrate us. Asatru is a name applied to us by us to positively express our loyalty to our gods. And in a similar way, the other little known variant of the name in German was Hexennacht, which means witch's night. To make the things match up and synergize and to get our language in line with the lore, we moved that to Nornanaut, which literally means witch's night. So it's the exact same as Hexennacht, or it's witch's night, if that's what you'd like to call it. Following that in May is May Day. Why do we call it May Day? I don't know. It happens to be in May. It's the start of May. But it's funny because all of the reasons spiritually that we celebrate it, and even the exact time of year it's celebrated in, our ancestors, in the time of our lore, they celebrated it too. People act like it's a very modern invention. It's not, but the name of May Day is. But Sommermal is what our ancestors called it. And it was, again, for the same reasons. The celebrating of the virility of the beginning of spring. We celebrate it the same way you are accustomed to with the dancing around the maypole. It is all the things that you are used to calling May Day. And if you want to still call it May Day, go ahead. But we're officially calling it Sommermal, like our ancestors did, honoring that tradition that, like all of the things that we do, should be eternal. And I think that aligning our naming scheme with that Norse nomenclature does that. It brings these things all together and it aligns them in a way that makes them eternal and not situational on a time or a place, but in line with the eternal nature of our lore. It's followed by midsummer, which is midsummer, which is the same thing. And you can say it with whatever, whether you want the ed rune in it or not, means the same thing, is what our ancestors called it for all of the same reasons. That one's not a big difference. Sigurblot is Sigurblot, because again, that's where the name comes from. That's what our ancestors did. Freyfaxi is Freyfaxi. Happens to be an Old Norse name from an Old Norse saga, and so there's no change there. Hostblot is the harvest bloat and winter finding. Again, it sounds a little bit awkward till you're used to saying it, but it's what our ancestors called this exact ceremony that comes from the time of our lore, that is well attested, that was extremely important. And we're not changing anything we're doing about it other than referring to it as our ancestors did, as Hostblot, which means, harvest bloat. Winter nights. You can keep calling it winter nights, or what our ancestors used to call it is Veterniter, which means winter nights. Again, this was a well-attested thing that was done in our ancestors' day. It is an ancient custom, an ancient tradition, and it was celebrated the same way. For the longest time, we would hear that no, Decirblot was done in the spring. And in some instances it was. But recently, reading our lore, no, they also did in different places, did a Decirblot during this winter nights period and celebration, just as we've always done in the AFA, and it's become midsummers typically have been our big event, but early on in the Asatru Folk Assembly, before we focused on midsummer, winter nights or Veterniter was the event, and that connection with our Decir was some of the, if not the most powerful bloatar that I've ever been a part of. So there's that. It again goes without saying, it's literally winter nights in Old Norse. There's Einherjablot, which is Feast of the Einherjar, just what you would call it in Old Norse. I don't think should be confusing for folks. I think it captures all of what we do. I think it makes infinite sense. And if you just want to keep saying Feast of the Einherjar, you're welcome to. We're just going to refer to it as Einherjablot and carry on in that vein. And then Yule is Yule. Yes, we'd like to use the Old Norse spelling of it because it's cool and it keeps everything lined up and in harmony. Again, it's worth making the point that our gods are gods of order. The more we can straighten things up and make them orderly, they synergize better, they fit better. And I think there's a value in doing that and keeping things orderly. But yeah, it's Yule, exact same way that you would normally celebrate it. So I don't think it's a big change there. But I do understand we become really used to how we do stuff, and tradition's important. I am not trying to erode or take away tradition in any way, but I am trying to solidify going forward, doing things in the best way we can as we learn new stuff. Sometimes the question gets asked, well, how come that's not what they did in, I don't know, pick a point in the 1980s or the 90s? And one of the reasons, because we know more now than we did then. We have access to a lot more primary sources. We have access to translated materials that weren't available to everybody back then. The reasons things were named the way they were named in the 1970s and 80s is because they did the best they could to name them the best way that they knew how in an age where they were game to get pretty Viking LARPy. They were game to go really hard on the Old Norse if they knew it. But our people didn't know as much then. The more we've learned and grown, the more we've drawn closer to a better understanding of how to do this right, the more that we are, tweaking things here and there to facilitate that. And I truly hope we never stop doing that. But that is the answer to the question. And during that time, not only has John joined us, but he's got his lighting set up. He was on some kind of a journey. Now he has found himself back home. Welcome, John. Should I say welcome, Gothi Rock?
Thank you, sir. It's lovely to be here with everyone. I apologize for being late getting in. We had technical issues. That journey was part of me freaking out because I couldn't get any signal, and I just I'm in slippers and a good top. I just jetted down to the city because I was like, no, I'm gonna pick up bars somewhere, and then brought them home with me, I guess.
That's the way to do it. So I mentioned to folks a little bit about all of the celebratory occurrences of Ostara at Thorshof this year, or should I say Austra at Thorshof this year, and one of those being your ordination. We are tremendously honored to have you amongst the Gothar, and I was very honored to ordain you there. For folks that don't know, I know you've been on the program before, kind of peripherally. Tell people a little bit about who you are, what you do, what your background is.
All right. Yeah, it was a great honor to be ordained at Ostra. And I love Thorshof. I love specifically the Hof there. So myself, my name is Jon Rock. I live in Indiana. I am from Indianapolis. Let's see here. I have been a member of the AFA not real long, since July of 21. And I hopped in almost immediately as an apprentice, and I have been trying to get things rolling in Indiana and the surrounding areas since then. So I work in auditing. I have a background in finance and accounting, and before that, I used to work for a living until they shut the factories down and sent John to college because he was tired of looking for blue collar jobs. So that is my story in brief, as pertains to the AFA.
All right. Well, so getting with some of the questions, how do you plan to honor both today's hero, Hauken Jarl, and tomorrow's hero, Stubbo?
So we are having a Nornanaut, the artist previously known as Hexanaut, moot on Saturday. And we have recently begun our event structure with an ancestors bloat before we do anything else. And so as part of that ancestral bloat, we will pay homage to whoever the hero of the month is. This month having two, we'll mention them both. But yeah, so that's nice. So we're going to do that. We honor them. We talk a little bit about their life. We I'll mention them when I do the ancestral bloat when we get upstairs in our building, and we'll probably set a plate aside for each one of them. That's something that we have often done in the past.
All right. Well, Sierra would like to know, Gothi Rock, what is your favorite type of corn? And secondly, what is your favorite corn with a K song?
So it's a myth that, that's a meme that got played out. We're not really corn crazed maniacs here in Indiana. I rarely, we don't rely on corn to survive here. And I never listened to the band Corn either. I did, I got a shirt at the state fair that was given to a friend of mine that just had a picture of Indiana on it. Wait, is that how it was? Yeah, and it said Corn, and they stole the logo. It's one of those cheap, flea market style shirts, but we're not really the corn crazed savages that the memes would have everyone believe. We're very standard people out here.
There you have it. Clearly, that was very well played.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those of you who are listening on the podcast, you missed the joke, but that's okay. He decided to quaff from a can of canned corn, much to the amusement of my wife, who I can hear downstairs cackling.
Yeah, that's whole kernel sweet. That's good corn. Here in Indiana, we do a lot of feed corn, but sweet corn.
Truth comes out in Corn Veritas. So threw me for a loop. That was very well done. That was clever.
Thank you.
I'd like to give a special shout out to folk builder Sarah, who does so much for our church every single day. Thank you for everything that you've done and continue to do. This comes from Gothi Mayo, but it is well deserved. Sarah, you're awesome. And Bodhi appreciates you, and so do the rest of us.
I appreciate you too, Sarah. I'm a big fan of Sarah.
There you go. We're Sarah fans here this evening.
Big fan.
So in the time frame here, Corey in Minnesota donated $60 to the Njordshof Fund. Thank you, Corey. Much appreciated. That gets us closer. Everything gets us closer, and we appreciate all of you who are donating this evening and who have donated and continue. You guys, I don't think that I can impress upon y'all just how astounding it is to watch the generosity and selflessness of a great number of our folk and our membership when it comes to anything they're donating to, be it financially or through their labor or through just giving of themselves. I have been very blessed in my life to be surrounded by some truly, truly amazing people. And you guys and your generosity is such a massive part of why we are able to accomplish as much as we are able to in the short amount of time and with our current numbers. And I think as a, backhanded compliment or testimony to that, looking at our membership and the time frame we accomplish in, our enemies fully believe that we must be funded by Mexican drug cartels. We must be funded by the FBI as a honeypot operation. There must be some nefarious way that we are funded, because it is literally inconceivable to them that we are able to be successful in the way that we've been. You all, your generosity, your loyalty, and your devotion is a massive factor in that. I don't ever want to discount the blessings of our ICR that have helped us get here, but you guys giving of yourself is a huge part of it, and it's much appreciated. Sarah, who just got high praise, it is well deserved because she donated $25 to the Njordshof Fund. And she donated that before she got the praise, just so everybody knows. Appreciate that, Sarah. Thank you very much. So our Indiana folk builder wants to know, are our gods the same gods as our prehistoric ancestors from the steppe? If yes, did the prehistoric Proto-Indo-European gods interact in tribes or interact with the tribes in different ways, leading to unique pantheons? Yes, and yes. John, elaborate.
So yes, very specifically. So our people come most likely, as near as we can tell, from one beginning point. A lot of the modern science thinks that that's, I'm somewhere in Ukraine, the Uramat. I have friends that'll argue it's from somewhere in the, in the poles. But as our people spread in a diaspora, they took our gods and our initial religion with them. And so you notice there are some obvious similarities between the evolution of our gods amongst our different groups of people. So that's why you'll notice there are similarities between the Hellenics and the Slavs and the Germanics. And there is a theory that, I believe, and I think it's logical, that some of that is the original stories and the original pantheon of our gods, which is shaped a little, as it traveled across all of Europe, and obviously it's followed us now to the New World. But that some of it too is a result of that pantheon of our indigenous Aryan gods, interacting with those different tribes of our people in different ways, as the question mentioned, because that's what those people needed at that time. And I've the Alshirio Gothi has spoken about that before, that it's the way that our gods, who are eternal and ubiquitous to our people, choose to interact with groups of our people, deals to a certain extent with who those people are and what position they find themselves in. So they may have interacted with the ancient Greek in a different way that they would have interacted with the common era Germans. So as the Alshirio Gothi said, the answer is yes. But that's sort of some of the theory behind why that happened. A little bit of it is us twisting the stories as time and distance grew between us. And then some of it is the actual interaction that those people who were faithful with our gods had with those gods. And, that's why they may have championed one particular god over another in the hierarchy, depending on the scenarios they found themselves in, not only as that people and in that location, but in that period of time.
Certainly, what Gothi Rock said, but this is why it's very important to start on the right foot with how we approach religion and any authentic study of not only our faith but other faiths. What I think is all too often done is we start with a linguistic, a scholarly approach to one group of people at a certain time. And we have a number of sociological and anthropological theories about Dumazillian functions and myth structure and all of these things. And we try to force divinity to fit whatever we learned in whatever branch of study or education that we're comfortable with. and look at it through that lens. And I think that's dishonest, and we don't do that. We don't try to build a relationship with our friends and our family based on studies in biology or cultural anthropology or understanding of the concept of archetypes. No, you see them as individuals, you get to know them, you learn about them through interaction, through talking with them and trying to get them know them better. You don't force them to fit your preconceived slots that you've made for functionality or for cultural tradition. Our gods are real, they exist, they are living entities. If that is true, which it is, then we have to follow the logic for it. Certainly, if these are the gods that formed us and shaped us as people, then they have to be as old as our race is, or certainly the major ones of them do. The ones that are implicated in the creation of us, they have to be as old as us. Surely, when we understand the migratory patterns of our folk over the history of the millennia since the Ice Age, we can see clearly in linguistics the march of one race of people through the world, and it's over time and space developing different cultural settings and linguistics as time goes on. We can trace all of those things back to a root. Certainly, just as the genetics of those people share a common origin, the metagenetics and connection with divinity of our people share that as well. So, of course, the other pantheons of Aryan gods are a reflection of our gods through the eyes and the linguistics and the cultural context of that group of our cousins as time, space, and migration have separated things out. It's funny because when we see the very clear one-for-ones between, like, for example, you see, Wotan, Woden, and Odin, and they're obviously the same. Nobody really contests that. But when you move it one step further, it starts becoming a little bit more confusing. There's a lot of overlap between closely related groups of people, but the further you get it apart over time and linguistic variation, it never works out as clean as we want, to where this god equals that god equals this story is the same as this story. But I say that the similarities are astounding. The obvious correlations are myriad. Finding everything exactly one for one, it doesn't work that way, and it's not that clean. I know that everyone out there might wish that it were. Shoot, I wish it was. It would be easier. But it doesn't work that way. And it's one of the reasons we could drive ourselves insane trying to forcibly match all of the nuance. But that doesn't really move us forward or get us there. What does is choosing what to go with and going with that wholeheartedly, which is why we have embraced the Norse nomenclature for the understanding of Aryan religion. It is our best preserved, most complete in a time of the most piety collection of lore and understanding of how we have related to our gods. And it is, in fact, that understanding, that verbiage through that lens that the Allfather reached out to our founder, Stephen Anthony McNallen, in 1968 to get all of this started that we do today. It is, in fact, in that concept and that understanding that the reawakening of our folk in the last century occurred, and that is what's brought us to where we are. That has been shown to have the divine approval of the Iseer time and time again. And the better we align with that, and the more we build comprehensively upon that system, the greater blessings we have and continue to experience. But yes, absolutely. If there's, when our people go from one valley to the next, you don't spring up a whole new pantheon of gods. That's just not logically how that works. Certainly, these are the gods that have been with our folk since the dawn of our folk, since ancient Hyperborea and before. And these will continue to be the gods of our folk for eternity. White Horse Asatru.
I actually don't mean to interrupt, but I didn't know we were playing a drinking game tonight. But if you scroll down, apparently we're about to start one.
Oh, I don't know the rules.
Scroll to the bottom.
I'm on it. So, that said, White Horse Asatru. I've been trying to understand the myth where Odin and the giant race and a giant race on their horses. Then Thor destroys the giant and gets trapped underneath the leg of the Jotun. Could the horse mean Asatru versus Christianity or versus Rokatru? John, what are your thoughts?
I would say that, yes, it could mean those things, but that doesn't mean that it was meant to represent those things. When it is easy when we look at any myth or anything in the lore that teaches a lesson, particularly something that teaches universal lessons, and then we take and we plug very specific players into it. So it could mean that. It could mean, I could come up with scenarios in which it represented anything that any singular individual found oppressive. And that's not to dismiss that manner of thought, because one of the things that makes our mythos so timeless is the ability to take it and to take its lessons and to apply them in ways that are meaningful for you and for different periods of time. That's why they survive and thrive when other things are forgotten.
Well put. That is the caution. It is very, and a lot of the things that we talk about on the show are directionality. No, that's not what the lore is about, but that's not what that piece of lore is about, in the sense that that's not what the original intent was. That's not what the understanding was at the time, because our lore and our mythos is eternal. To think that it references, like, Rokatru wasn't a thing until the 1990s. To think that that was some kind of, just for that, they prophesied this bit of lore, it's just the wrong direction to go. Clearly, that's not what the lore is about. But, as Goði Rock said, it is applicable to that. The point of our lore isn't to recognize an ancient story about an ancient happening. It's to learn a lesson by those stories. It is to be able to take the lore and apply it, or see points of similarity, or have things that we struggle with in our life harken back to lessons learned from that lore and through understandings of that lore. So it's not at all wrong to have that thought. It's just in what direction it goes. You're applying the lore to that scenario. People didn't write the lore in response to that scenario. The directionality matters. But no, finding parallels that's doing it right. Just don't forget, the order of operations. The lore comes before the circumstance. The circumstance doesn't create the lore. Matt, what did you think of the TRT Worlds segment on the AFA? First, and I mean this wholeheartedly, it was beautiful. Like it was well shot with the camera, like the cinematography of it was really well done, and it was a very nice looking video. I think it would have been more effective to vilify us if the presenter would have gone maybe 75, maybe 60 to 75% as hard as he did. The like sounding super concerned about the evil races was a little bit too much of a put on sinister tone. The like, let's play villain music when the AFA said stuff. They swung so hard that it made it a little bit funny. And I think that most people, I think it didn't have the effect that they wanted. I think it made any threat seem comical and not threatening. And I think it made a lot of people very aware that they were just trying to do a hit piece, which is fine. We don't know that going in most of the time, but we highly suspect that every time. That said, the random let's get a NAACP guy that we found in the area that doesn't know anything about us and just get him to interject about some experience he had as a young man with the Klan doesn't have anything to do with us. There was a lot of little random things. I don't think they had a lot of success finding counterpoints, so they had to reach on that a lot. But that said, it put us before audiences that didn't know we existed. It generated and continues to generate interest in who we are and what we're doing, and prompts other people to learn a little bit more and get our faces and our message out in the world. So I'm glad I did it. I would absolutely do it again. Yeah, so that's my thought on it. I mean, it was silly. I enjoyed looking at it. I think that Witten Swan did an amazing job. I thought he did awesome. He represented us very, very well. I'm very proud of that. Beautiful shots of our people and of Lord Thor's Hoff. I thought all of that was really cool, and I think it was a really pretty video. Again, it's unfortunate. I had, and I know that Svan had a long interview with the guy. I think mine was about 2 hours and 45 minutes. So we talked about a lot of things that I wish would have been in there. I wish would have been covered, but I don't think those things fit the narrative that they were trying hard to go after. But no, I mean, I'm glad it occurred. Certainly, I would much prefer if they were glowing, celebratory pieces about the AFA, but that's just not the world we live in right now. I'll hear you, Gothi. What is your favorite day at the gym? How important is our physical health in relation to our spirituality? It depends on how my routine is set up. Back day. Back day, especially if back day is paired with back and biceps, that's my favorite day at the gym. Especially if that includes deadlifts that day. Deadlifts have always been my best lift. So yeah, back and biceps is my favorite day at the gym. How important is it? Extremely important. You guys will recall our soul complex is multifaceted. We are not some kind of holy soul inside of, a decrepit or gross body and a gross existence. No, life is beautiful. Our body, both in the sense of our physical body, our leak, but also in our hammer, or the way that we project ourselves, is extremely important to our soul. Your physical appearance speaks volumes about. So, beside the point, your physical characteristics are literally pieces of your ancestors showing through in your features and in your genes. But the condition that you keep your body and your physical self in is it can't be overstated of how much spiritual importance is in that. It speaks volumes to your dedication, to your discipline, to your how serious you are about who you are and how you present yourself. It speaks to your health or your lack of health. Being good looking, and especially good looking in the ways you can control. And I did want to add this to it. Being in a healthy and appealing physical condition is hugely important. Also, packaging it well, dressing nicely. If you're a lady, doing your makeup, doing your hair, looking pretty. If you're a man, trying to look nice, taking care of, if you choose to have facial hair, keeping it maintained, of trying to present yourself in the best way, that is powerful. It's powerful to your friends. It's powerful to your enemies. It's powerful to the world. I am aided tremendously when the people who support me or who stand next to me or who are associated with me look good. So take this back to the video that was just talked about. When we have our people showing up, looking good, standing tall, and presenting their best self, it makes an impact sublingually on the audience. When your opposition doesn't show up looking nice or doesn't look like they take care of themselves, all of those things communicate volumes on a sublingual level. So much of our communication is done through nonverbal communication. I think somewhere north of 60%. We pick up so much on what we perceive in all our other senses. Doesn't matter what, that's silly. It obviously matters what someone says. But beyond that, it matters tremendously. Does what they say match the person that's in front of you? Is who they are presenting verbally the same as who they are presenting physically? The impression you make by how well you take care of yourself, and by, especially in a spot where you are choosing how you show up and you are choosing how much effort you put on being healthy, on being physically fit, all of those things project your ability to be effective in the world around you, with every single person that interacts with you, every person that sees you from a distance. And when they associate the person they're talking with bigger things, if they see you look good, you are presenting success, you are presenting health, you are presenting confidence, and you are wearing a hammer, they associate the package you are presenting with our faith. And that cuts both ways. If you look like a slob and you're engaged in churlish behavior and you're fat and you look bad, that speaks about who we are also. So it is tremendously important and can't be overstated. And all of us, and I will say this too, all of us, wherever you are right now, that's where you are, and we all start someplace. Each and every one of us can present a better version of ourselves tomorrow. And all of us should be very committed and very willing to help all of our brothers and sisters to present that better version of themselves tomorrow if they want that help and that's something they desire to do. And we try really hard to do that within the AFA. John, do you have thoughts about the effect of physical fitness spiritually and in the world around us.
Not much that you haven't already said. I mean, I would echo that, obviously everything you said is absolutely true. I mean, you yourself, you're a flag, and you are representative of who the internal you really is, not who you think you are, but who you actually are, because everyone wants to be, fit generally. I think the only thing to really add that the Al-Shuriyar Gothi did not go into great detail is that your self-esteem, when you know that you are in good health or that you look good, particularly as compared to those around you, can really make a difference. So, aside from just who you actually are and what you are representing, you are going to do a better job if you are presenting yourself well or making an effort to do that. A little bit of it is going to be an ego boost. They've done studies where if you dress up, even if you're just speaking on the phone, you speak more professionally, you speak with more confidence. So, it's a very real thing. Every day we go out into the world and you, to a certain degree, can choose what kind of day you're going to have or how your interaction is going to go with someone else. And, if you've got your best foot forward, you feel a little bit better. I don't have to dress up in my office. And so sometimes I don't. But when I do hit it harder. I feel better. I present better. I do things better. So sometimes I dress up in the office just to do it. And that's an important aspect of all of this. You are muted, sir.
So I know we're getting a little bit off of the physical fitness aspect of this, just broadening it to looking good and confidence, but that makes all the difference. I've seen that countless times in my life and my own experience, and I think we all know it to be true. There is something inherent about your conviction and your believability when you talk about things, but you aren't really about that life, as the kids would say. You pick up with that on body language, on appearance, and on conviction, and it is plain for the world to see. It's plain for animals to see. It's funny that way. Other creatures in this world pick up on stuff that's very subtle in ways that people don't. Children do. If you're dealing with people that don't speak English, you can communicate a lot just by not even what you say, but how you say it, by how you gesture, by the faces that you make, by whether you seem like you're confident or do you seem like you're a victim? Do you seem like you're scared of something? Do you seem shifty? You feeling good about the way you look makes you more confident. You being more confident makes you more effective in every aspect of your life. So take care of yourself in all ways, but very seriously, take care of yourself physically. It's really important and it's very easy to overlook.
Always squat.
We're currently getting unkind emails that make me chuckle because they're kind of silly. All right. So from Gothi Daniel or Witten Daniel Young, John, what drove you towards the clergy? Who were the Gothar that inspired you to do so?
Witten Daniel Young. So, what inspired me toward the clergy? What a great question. Okay, so one, obviously, the way the hierarchy of the AFA is built, uh, to become a Gothi is a step along that hierarchy. So, you hop into it, you're on the bottom level, and you're trying to do well, and you want to keep doing well, and you like to keep getting promoted. And to become a Gothi or a Githia is the highest rank that reasonably anyone could expect if they keep doing the right things. That being said, that's of course that's not a calling. That's just part of it. So as regards a calling, I'm trying to think about the way I want to say this, because I don't know that I did want to pursue that path necessarily. So here's the thing, and I think a lot of people that have actually tried and done this sort of thing feel this. It is a very weighty thing. And I mean, honestly, even when I was an apprentice folk builder or a folk builder, there's a lot of weight there, because I'd have men that were superior to me in a lot of ways, and they're looking to me for some sort of guidance, either to guide them in something in their life or just to guide the event and what we're doing and to be a representative of that. And it's very weighty. I'm looking at people that are, some of them are stronger than me, some of them are smarter than me, some of them are more successful than me, and the ones that aren't, it's not as difficult, because you want to help them, but you know that you can help them. But the idea of actually wearing the mantle of, I'm a priest of the Iseer, that's it's very heavy. And I deserve it because the AFA says I deserve it. Like I believe that in the church. I'm a humble guy, but I don't believe in false humility. I mean, if we say it, it's true. But there are many instances where I know I'm lacking, right? Like we all, when we think of what should a priest of the Iseer be, I'm sure we all see all of the myriad of ways in which we lack that. I see that. So, but somebody has to do that work. And so it's kind of just a matter of being willing to grit and do that work. So, I mean, you think about doing it, the whole time you're building up to it, but when you actually get there, yeah, it's just so much easier from the sidelines. So, I mean, that's a non-answer. This is a bad answer. I wasn't expecting this question. I don't know, but I mean, I do want to help. I mean, you have to, at your core, you have to want to help our people. And at some point, when you're trying to help our people, if you're a halfway competent person, you have to say, all right, I'm going to tighten my belt, grit my teeth, and do this thing and lead our people to the extent that I can, even though leading is an uncomfortable thing. Everyone wants to be the cool Sigma advisor that just whispers into some other guy's ear and gets treated with all the respect without taking any of the risk. And how many of the Gothar are there? I think there's like 17 of us, right? There are a lot of opportunities for us to shoulder a lot of burden and maybe misstep. And so and not just misstep, as a representative of our gods in the AFA, but I mean, I haven't been a Gothi very long, and actually some of this came from before I was a Gothi, but people would come to me with problems that are serious, and they're looking to you for some guidance because they assume you have it. And it's it's heavy. Heavy is the best thing. It's an honor. It's a great honor It's really it's the greatest honor I've been given in my life thus far. But it's a terrible responsibility. It's it's but that's why
I do know, but I want our audience to understand the gravity of that our Gothar feel. I'm glad that you feel that it is extremely heavy. If it is ever light, then hang it up, give your ring back. You don't deserve it. Those of us who are doing it right, we are always going to measure ourselves as less than we could be because we all know that it is our obligation to always be more, to always do more, because our gods always deserve the best. And that means and it doesn't mean like obsess and have a problem, but it does mean a daily sense of tremendous responsibility. And we are very, very proud, and you absolutely deserve it. And you are, we're all extremely proud of you. We love having you on the team and as a colleague, but it's a really important thing. And it's not something silly. It's not something casual. It's a legitimate ordination that was handed to the chosen herald of the Allfather in 1968, and that he has, with care, passed down, that's made its way to us. And it's our job to be the best possible stewards of that ordination that we can be. I don't think there's a way to really understand it in full until you find yourself in that spot. But the kind of theme is it's immensely important. I'd also like to acknowledge some other things that are really appreciated. You guys are amazing. James in Indiana donated $200 to help us pay off Njordshof. Tell John Rock to take another sip of that corn juice.
Cheers, James.
Well done. But wait, there's more. Finn Wraith bought us coffee. This is my birthday donation since it was my birthday last weekend. Happy birthday, Finn Wraith. We appreciate you. I appreciate you being a long-term listener and participant in this broadcast. Your questions and comments have greatly added to the program, and we appreciate your donation. And Soren, Valen, and Roland in Michigan donated $500 to the Njordshof Fund. Much appreciated, folks. Thank you very much for doing that.
Thanks, guys. Look forward to seeing you this weekend.
Wayne Sheehan bought us 5 coffees, another great workout while watching a great show. And look who's on. John Rock. Good to see you, bud. You got fans, John. You got fans. And Jarrett Abbott bought us 6 coffees. Thank you, Jarrett. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, everyone who's been so overwhelmingly generous. Thank you, guys. So far tonight, we have dropped that number that we owe on the Hoff down to, got it pulled up. Hold on, my phone went to sleep. Tut out. All right, $45,469. It's about $800-ish we've generated in the last hour and a half because you guys are amazing. Thank you all so very, very much. It is very much appreciated.
So how far is that from getting it under or getting it more than 200,000 raised?
Oh, shoot. That's a number I didn't keep track of. You've got that
over
number.
the 200,000 mark. What are we at?
What's up?
Well, how far are we away from having 45,000 left?
Okay. We are $469 from having that.
$469, and we will have raised $200,000 towards the Nordhoff.
Which
That's
is
a big number
by itself more than we've ever paid for any Hoff. You guys are amazing. Thank you all so very, very much. You guys continue to be impressive. Next question. What main difference does the AFA have from the Asatru Alliance? So this is a historic question. And I think that, and I will absolutely get to in 2025 what the difference is. But I want to set the stage for it. In the 1970s and the 1980s, the foundations of the Asatru Folk Assembly were another AFA, the Asatru Free Assembly, also founded by Steve McNallen, and that organization was extremely influential in all of Asatru the way that it's practiced today. And it laid the groundwork for a lot of the things that we do. But it had a lot of work to do, a lot of ways that it wasn't perfect, as anything's not. And a lot of different personalities vying for things. It was a much more, dare I say, chaotic, all kind of, I don't know, a lot of different personalities from a lot of different extreme places with varying different views on the world come together for a quasi-democratic, quasi-mob rule battle royal of things that made getting things done very tricky. And eventually, the failings and internal struggles with that caused Steve McNallen to dissolve the Asatru Free Assembly in 1987. When he did that, he passed on the materials of the Asatru Free Assembly to Valgard Murray, who recently passed away. And they took over kind of, in a way, some of the mantle of that original organization as they move forward. And Steve had some other things to do in the world and some different ways on his own to grow, to develop, and to come back stronger and with a better idea of how to do this right, which he eventually did in the founding of the Asatru Folk Assembly at the top of the year in 1995. But one of the reasons that led to the founding of the AFA was that the Asatru Alliance, being a confederation of allied kindreds, they were much more of a democratic kind of an organization, and eventually their leader, Valgard Murray, signed on to a greater pagan heathen statement acknowledging that Asatru was open to anybody of any ethnicity that wanted to be part in it, and thus was, universal in that sense. And that was a core belief of the Asatru Free Assembly, and all Asatru in the United States before that is no. Asatru is in fact the ethnic religion of Aryan peoples. That was a core of everything this has always been about, but due to increased social pressures and political sway of degenerate forces, the Asatru Alliance legend has it, reluctantly signed off on this agreement. But that signature was one of the things that caused our founder to know, I have to come back and I have to preserve Asatru for its folkish, its ethnically exclusive purpose for our people. As Steve's always said, the existence of our people is not negotiable. And so he came back and founded the Asatru Folk Assembly in a large portion as a response to that position. So in the early days of the AFA, throughout the 90s and the very early 2000s, because Steve and Valgard were friends and there was a lot of past association there, it's like the Alliance had kindreds, but the AFA had individual members. And there was kind of a, hey, we're similar, but we're all on the same team, because the Alliance, though they signed that thing, that was just so people would get off their back, and they were really folkish, or so they would say. So folkish Asatru was represented by both organizations, and there was a overlap in membership and a sense of brotherhood that was part of things until well into the 2000s. But as this century took shape, the Alliance much more was focused on, they weren't really focused on growth. They were focused very heavily on a reenactment culture and on kind of keeping their head down, staying out of the fray, and to a degree, and I'm trying to figure out the nice ways to say some things, because things that sound pejorative aren't necessarily meant that way, but kind of like an old guys drinking club thing, to do the backyard Asatru that they did in the 80s without really a lot of religiosity to it. Some of the inside jokes in the Asatru Alliance tended to take more significance than the actual religious practice of Asatru. They have this really cringy spam cult thing that they do, and it makes me uncomfortable. But yeah, as things have gone on and on, they've become less and less interested in growing or developing Asatru, or really being involved in Asatru, other than maintaining the same, old and aging out kindreds and membership that they had back in the 80s. Today, over the last, it's funny, you start getting a certain age and years start coming together, but over recent years, as Valgard has passed, or had passed the torch to one Alsharier Gothi that was of some degree Asian or origin. I don't know how Asian the guy was, but significantly enough so to where it was kind of scandalous. And over their recent guy who doesn't exhibit a great deal of character, is a former AFA member that would promise us loyalty and to do a lot of things, but didn't ever live up to his word. And when the political climate, as we've all seen, shifted to where it wasn't popular to be racially aware or to support your own people, they put out a very elaborate statement about how the Asatru Alliance completely disavows folkishness, disavows any ethnic exclusivity in the practice of Asatru, basically disavows many of the fundamentals the Alliance was founded on, and its predecessor, the Asatru Free Assembly, was founded on, and all of these things. That kind of cemented a permanent, we don't want anything to do with that organization. What they do is not Asatru. What they do is a gross impiety and a gross offense against our gods, against our founders, against our ancestors, and against all the things that we hold dear. What's worse is, privately, their leadership admits they don't really agree on those things. They just were trying to make it easier on their members. So they don't even have the honor of sincere conviction. They're just cowardly. So I don't have anything positive to say about the organization that calls itself the Asatru Alliance. I don't think that there is a substantial amount of things going on there, and they've really disgraced their members, their gods, and where they've come from. So there's no tie whatsoever between us and them at this stage. John, do you have any experience with the Asatru Alliance?
No, sir. I am a heterosexual white male.
Well said. All right. What else we got? John, is there anyone in your immediate area that you see potential in for folk builders / Gothar?
Who asked that?
Jumbles.
Jumbles. Okay.
I'm not aware of who carries the street name Jumbles.
That is a hard name. I don't want to cross them. So Jumbles would be one probably. But yeah, no, I don't know if it's just Hoosier-Borean supremacy or what, but we have a lot of high quality people that wander in that I would love to take credit for, but they're not really my doing. So, I mean, I'm sure that of the people that I deal with on a regular basis, I could find 4 worthy folk builders, and probably each one of them I would think would be suitable for, Gothic ordination at some point. Now that's what I see it playing across your face.
I think that Lucat is suggesting that Jumbles might be a juggalo. That's what I took by his comment. Not sure if that was the intention.
Juggalos aren't Asatru. That's in the lore. I've my hands tied on that. I can't.
So if you were listening to this and you find yourself wearing clown face paint, I don't know your spiritual inclination, and we'd have to have a conversation to see if you in fact cannot practice Asatru. I don't know if the gospel according to the Hatchet Man is in conflict with our faith or not.
The great Malenko is not in our pantheon. He's not.
I think that there would be some re-education needing to go on with Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope.
Reasonably, though.
I do not know.
I'm sorry. Just to actually answer the question. I mean, yeah, there's
Sure.
probably 4 guys that I have on hand that would make good folk builders, and I wouldn't think someone would make a good folk builder if someday they wouldn't probably make a good Gothi. So yeah, we've got some great guys here. We've got great people everywhere. Indiana. I joke that we're Hoosier-Borean supremacy, the greater Hoosier Reich, but we have great people everywhere that would be perfectly suitable for folk building. It's a matter of someone wanting to step up and do it. So this is a good segue into saying that anyone who does have an interest, please step up.
So I will say this. First, yes, absolutely. Okay. I will be serious, and then I will be less so. A lot of people may not understand. There is not a limit on, like how many folk builders we have or how many Gothar we can have, or, oh, well, there's already a folk builder in my state, so it's not necessary. No, we can use folk builders and we can use Gothar everywhere we have people who step up or feel a calling or are motivated to serve our gods, our folk and our Asatru folk assembly in that way, and we would love to have that happen. So if that's something that you want to do wherever you find yourself, there's a lot of work to go around. We are doing just like John spoke earlier about how the ordination is extremely heavy, and we all, we don't obsess. Like, we're proud of ourselves. It's not like we feel unworthy because we suck. We are never worthy because you can't possibly be worthy of our gods, because our gods are that glorious. We always owe them more and better. We can't rest on our laurels because victory never sleeps. That's part of the reason for the slogan is, no, you've got to always be out there trying to earn victory and be worthy. That said, the mission of the AFA our ambition will always outstrip our resources. And if our resources doubled tomorrow, the goals and the plans and the things we would try to accomplish would triple. Our gods are worthy of that, our ancestors are worthy of that, and our folk are worthy of that. And we will always try to push forward, which means we will always need lots of help from our folk and people who want to step up. So if you'd like to folk build, talk to your local folk builder about it, or you can talk to Nathan Erlinson, Gothi Nathan Erlinson, who is our folk builder coordinator, who gets that all squared away. But yeah, please do consider that, absolutely. Final closing note on the Juggalos, though. Some of y'all may know, last year I got my black belt in Danzen-ryu Jiu-Jitsu. And one time I was training with a man who I think he was a Juggalo in a former life. I don't know his current affiliations, but he wasn't decked out in his makeup, but he had the tattoo and the necklace. Life came at him real quick, and he did not seal the valves, and he had an accident and had to leave the mat. And Witten Daniel Young refers to that when joking with me as my special dookie move. So there you have that. And now we'll move on to more elevated topics. But it's not often a Juggalo opportunity presents itself, and stories must be told sometimes. That said, Gothi Rock, what's your favorite color?
I'm sorry, my favorite what?
Your favorite color.
My favorite color is green.
Smart man.
Yeah. It's obviously the superior color. How much of the audience came up with a different one, you think, when I said that?
There you have it. So, does the AFA believe that all Christian pantheons in Europe are the same gods? Are the Hellenic, Celtic, and Slavic pantheons the same as the gods the AFA worships with different cultures? So we talked about this earlier in the show, but it's something a lot of people think on. The short answer is yes. The long answer is you will be endlessly befuddled in exactly how that works out if you try to find the exact one-for-one correlation in all of the European pantheons. It does not work itself out nearly that clean. But yes, the original root of all of those pantheons goes back to one source, one root, one pantheon of gods that the Asatru Folk Assembly worships under the names and expression of the Old Norse as the Aesir. They reveal themselves over the march of time, over the space of eons and the sweep of tens of thousands of miles in different ways, with different namings, with different traditions and different expressions as those people's culture and languages evolved in different ways. But yes, those are the same gods that shaped us, that are our gods. We are their folk, and that will be the case for the remainder of time and beyond. Matt, what would you say to critics who accuse the AFA of being a cult, or just people who are curious about joining that may have concerns? Um, Two things. People that say we're a cult, I mean, it depends because it's a longer conversation. I don't think that word means what they think it means. In antiquity, you would talk about a cult of this god or a cult of that god. A group, it's funny because it's like administration or regime. They mean the same thing, but when it's the baddies, it's a regime. When it's the good guys that we like, it's an administration. It's a church or a religion when we like it. It's a cult or it's a cult when we want to demonize it. Either all religions are cults or we're not a cult. There is a modern sociological definition of cult that we kind of examined. An episode I did, I believe with Cliff, we examined it kind of in on episode 114. We examined it, and it's kind of fun because there's a lot of stuff that implies coercion and abuse and like a systematic mind control device and a lot of silly things. We're certainly not a cult in what the average person on the street would think a cult is, because we don't try to take over people's lives and separate them from their families or, trick them or threaten them with abuse or try to psychologically manipulate them. We do firmly believe in what we believe in. We absolutely try to teach our people and urge them to act right. And we have firm standards. And we also encourage people not to associate with those who've been disloyal and who have decided to try to damage us or go against our gods or hurt us, because anybody who takes things seriously wants loyalty. But no, we're not a cult, not in the sense that they probably think. What I would say to folks that have concerns or questions, it is unfortunate that we find ourselves in a soundbite world, because most of the real questions of life about things that are important don't have soundbite answers. I would encourage those people to ask any of us, to ask our Gothar, whatever the questions they might have, to listen to this program where we've probably addressed a lot of questions they might have, or to call me, email me, reach out to me personally and ask me, because I would love to talk to them. You can find out, and I would encourage any and everybody to find out what the core fundamentals of our belief are in the Asatru True Log Manual, which is available on our library, on our website. That is a concise expression of the very fundamentals of what we believe and what's foundational to our practice. So please check that out if you haven't. And please feel free to share that if people wonder, like, hey, what is this? What do you guys believe? This is the best way I've found to answer that question. But yeah, the solution to people who are curious is to have them ask. And any of us would love to tell them. The other thing is, watch our videos where we show a special. Oh, Nick, that's a good reminder. I'm just going to take this opportunity. I haven't gotten to you, but we just got done with the first quarter. We need to get that first quarter slideshow up. It hasn't occurred to me to get on you about it until right now.
Ooh.
But every quarter we do a slideshow about what the AFA has been up to in that quarter. And it's really nice because a lot of the time it's candid shots. It's shots of just us doing what we do, and you get to see who we are, where we're at. You see the people who we're associated with, and it demystifies what I think a lot of the critics would say we are or say we're about. I mentioned that how you present yourself says a lot. You're going to find happy, smiling, white families engaged in worship, engaged in fellowship with one another. And I think it's really disarming to anybody that might have fears about us. And the media tries really hard to get people to be afraid. So I would encourage everybody to check those out. And Nick and I will get over in the next couple of days getting that Q1 slideshow out to all you guys. John, do you have any thoughts on what do you say if people say we're involved in a cult, or that, you know, if people just have concerns about us? What are your thoughts, and how would you address that?
My thoughts mirror all of yours. Obviously, if you come out and dare meet any of us, you'll realize that we're perfectly safe to be around. I would say that, practically speaking, when most people think of a cult, I think one of the definitive qualities of that is that people are not free to leave, and so they're being held and brainwashed. And I think that is objectively and obviously not true. We have people that leave the AFA every day, which is unfortunate. Like, just about every day, all the time. We have people that come back all the time. We have new people joining. We have people that come check us out or join, leave for 2 months, and then come back 2 months later. You know, everybody goes home at the end of the night. So it's simply not, in real life, an environment that is conducive to what people perceive as cultish behavior. It's the reality of it is showing up, having a pitch in, doing a religious ritual that granted people outside of the religion may find slightly unusual, although it's really not that unusual to a lot of outsiders. And then everybody goes home at the end of the night. And I mean, they might come back a month later. I mean, we only have official moots for the most part once every month. That's no way to run a cult. So logically, objectively, it's simply not realistic to look at it through that lens.
Yeah, if we're a cult, we're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So I'd say about a lot of things. If we're a hate group, we're doing it wrong. There's way too much snuggles and crying and hugs and happiness. And, if we're a cult, we are woefully missing the mark. But we continue to have amazingly generous people. Thank you guys so much. Chris Lucat bought us 5 coffees. Folk Ermensel, he says, which is y'all's kindred. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Thank you, Chris. And Sarah donated $50 towards the Nordhoff Fund. Thank you so much, Sarah. We're doing awesome. We're $199 away from cresting that 200,000 mark. You guys are spectacular. I continue to be amazed. No, you guys are awesome. Thank you very much for the generosity. Let me see where we was on the questioning. All right. John, how would you say your path to Gothi changed your personal spiritual practice?
So if we're talking about the fullness of the path, so my origin story in the faith is similar to a lot of people's, right? So sometime, when I was in high school, I decided that religion was, theoretically important. And so you shouldn't just follow whatever you were born into. So you ought to look into it and figure out which one is correct. And so I did this big deep dive into different denominations and then different religions, never considering any of the indigenous European religions. It was just outside of my my realm of what I considered logically possible at the time. And like many of our people, everything seemed so foreign to me. And the Hinduism was even more foreign than Christianity, which didn't appeal to me in the first place because something about it just never gripped me. And I sat down, I read the Bible, and I was like, it's not that I don't believe the stories, even it's that I don't believe in the lesson in a lot of these instances, right? So, like many of our people, then I decided, well, I'm an atheist, and I think that hits a lot of our people because they equate their inability to find religion in a foreign religion with a lack of spirituality or an inability to find religion at all. And so I did that for a little while. Some of this is from how I should have told the story earlier when I was talking about my original path to the Gothi hut. So that's why it's so long. But so anyhow, so I'm that guy. And, so I started back, this was now in the early 2000s, might have been 2001. We had myself and a friend of mine, he was already training. We went and we started training in mixed martial arts. And, in 2001-ish in Indianapolis, it was not prevalent, right? So Indiana, though, does have the honor of having an early UFC fighter, Jason Gotti, who lived here. And so we would go and we'd roll in Jason's pole barn. And he would, he'd teach us jujitsu and we'd do that. And he's a real cool guy. And so he taught myself and some of my friends how to read runes. And he would practice rune divination. And so we would sit and we would do that. And it started opening up this idea to me that, okay, so, here are serious men who are grown, who are intelligent, who are engaging in this supernatural practice, and so that was really interesting to me. So I didn't flip automatically, but I started into like a lot of us do when we're wetting our feet. You start looking at the gods as archetypes. The kind of archetypal look like, okay, our people need to be guided. We need to act a certain way, and these are the lessons, and this is what our ancestors did. And then after you do that for a little bit, you start to realize, hey, this is real. Rune divination's real. These things have happened. Our gods are real. And then you start practicing more seriously. And then when that comes to actually answering the question is, like so many of our people who are suffering and they don't actually realize they're doing it, we had access to the internet back then too. I don't know where all these internet gurus think that they have some hot take on the religion that the AFA doesn't understand. But, so you read all the lore, you look at things online, you start practicing by yourself. You're doing your bloat by yourself, everything by yourself. I'd get together with a couple of my friends. We might do a little thing, but we hadn't laid out, we just laid out hey, we're going to give a gift. We're going to do a thing. And there was no real understanding on my end of the concept of Haminya as a group Haminya, how that ties into Orlaw, and that really religiously, there is a dictate for practicing with others. And really for practicing with the largest group you can get, which is why, I've always been pretty critical, as kindly as I could be, for people that feel like they don't want to come do it with the AFA. Now I'm a company man, right? So I get that sounds suspect, but I didn't have to be. There was a time I was perfectly happy doing things on my own with a friend or two. And when I came to realize the because that's a good thing about a large group like the AFA, the legitimate church is there are people there who know more than you, and you get to glean from them. And the gods are not interested in a contrarian. They're interested in a winner. They're interested in you participating on the winning team and adding to the largeness and the power of that Heminia. That's what survives the storm, not the individual. It's kind of like a fasces, right? You got the individual little stick, that's your Heminia, you and your three buddies. It snaps, right? You got this big Heminia of all these different guys, and it does not, right? It holds. So that's something that's changed in my practice during the road to Gothic ordination, is that there is now, for starters, the AFA has broken down what a bloat needs to be in the simplest steps, the simplest of steps, like the things that are provably required from the Bronze Age, like these steps, like you can do whatever you want, really. There's room for a lot of flair, but you need to achieve these three things, let's say. It depends on how you break up the steps, whether you process as part of a step or not, what have you. But so I have that model to play off of, and an understanding that, I should, when possible, enact those steps with others. And it's important that I do it with others, even though I can go do my own private practice the way I always used to. That's great. That's fine. But it should be in addition to the communal practice. And now, I mean, honestly, because I led bloat, all the time that I was an apprentice, up until now, which is great because you can do that. There's nothing to stop you. But it hadn't occurred to me before that the idea of having an ordained clergy, which is paramount, it's great, but even the idea of acting as a lay clergyman is really important. You are acting as a conduit between the Iseer and different people, and it's important not just because you're important that you're doing it, but it's important for them. You are helping them engage in the gift cycle with our gods. And so it's just, it adds more gravity to the situation, and it it really pushes the necessity for communal practice of the faith. I don't know how to read any other questions or anything, so
didn't know he was gone.
Well, yeah, I get pretty verbose, Nick, so I don't blame. It was an ideal time for him to slip away. I get that.
Absolutely, and that's what he does. He'll sneak off into the sunset or into the shadows while he leaves you guys to hold it down.
He is not the first person to get bored and wander away as I was speaking. That's a thing that I do.
I don't know. I think you can hold the rooms captive pretty well.
Yeah, well, that's with a firearm, sure. No one's leaving the room. Now, I shouldn't even joke about that. We have all these cultist questions coming up.
And I'd say you did pretty well holding us captive with, what was it, an axe? A couple weeks ago. So
that was a nice, yeah, we had a nice axe at auction that I believe. Oh, hello, sir.
Hello. I heard something about auctions. You are an amazing auctioneer. Those you might not know. This man presided over our record-breaking Thorshof auction at Ostara. Well done. We appreciate you. Speaking of stuff we appreciate, Bill in Tennessee donated $200 towards paying off Njord's off.
Bill was also generous in our auction.
In the last 2 hours and 20 minutes, we have raised over $1,000 for the payoff of Njord's off. Thank you all so very much. I am grateful and I am astounded. You guys are amazing. Thank you, Bill. Gothi Rock, I've heard that you bought a city block in Indiana, and I've also heard that you may or may not run a home for wayward men. Any truth to this, or is it fake news?
The place that I bought in the city is shaped like a block, so there is some truth there. I will give the story. So it has been joked that, you know, I run a home for wayward boys. It's been called the halfway house, which I find also amusing. The reality of the situation is, so long story long, right? I'm just going to keep yammering.
That's what we're here for. That's kind of a theme in this show.
That's the theme. So once upon a time, you know, I was married, and I then found myself in the Middle East on a deployment in the Middle East, and I was there for like 7 months. And as part of the standard, like the real deployment experience, you get a phone call one day that's like, hey, don't come home, you know, never come home. And so I was like, you know, okay, sure. And so I needed to find a place to live, right? That's just the story. And I was kind of in a little bit of a rush for it. So I found a dilapidated old farmhouse out in the middle of, I thought, nowhere at the time. It's actually built up around me quite a bit now. It's not a bad location. But so I got this great big house, right, on like 10 acres out here in Indiana. And you know, and it needed people to live in it, right? So I have 2 kids, and they were both living with me, but they, you know, they didn't take up that much space. So I just kept running across people, like our people, that, you know, a lot of our people need a place to stay, to get on their feet, you know, start trying to find a job and just kind of get going. So, you know, I had room. There was just no reason not to invite them in. And it really took off. And I mean, it got to the point where we were just, as large as this place is, we were just falling all over each other, which is a segue into the next thing that happened. So, you know, I kind of got the idea, hey, maybe this is sustainable, maybe it isn't, but maybe we could find something better. So I located a small city. It's technically a city, but it's very small, in rural Indiana. And it's a reasonable location. It's kind of equidistant between Indianapolis and then Cincinnati and Dayton. So 3 major metropolitan areas. And I found a building there. And it's one of those ubiquitous buildings that it's in all small town downtowns in America. You know, it's stores on the bottom, storefronts on the bottom, apartments up top. And I said, hey, if we bought this, I can move some of these goobers out of my house, and then like we could put them here, and we could kind of start trying to build community. It's sort of the kind of thing we're trying to do at Sigerheim, but, you know, rather than kind of building from the ground up in this scenario, we're just trying to move into a small town. And so we do have a building. It's in, you know, it's kind of done up so that, you know, I got 4 guys that are living there that are Asatru guys, our guys, which is great, because then you have this small nebula of people there to build from. And then we use the other half of the building for bloat and you know, bloat, holiday, whatever, you know, for whatever reason we get together. and it's been pretty good to us so far. We've pulled in some local people from the area, some great people. Mr. Burns, who just donated earlier, he's from the area. He's a good guy. We got a lot of good guys, and it's really been very good to us so far. And we are still in the stage where it needs a lot of repair, blah blah blah. So we are just anticipating, frankly, it is going to continue getting better and better. In fact, it's a sizable place, and I don't think we're going to be there much longer. I think I'm going to need to purchase a larger building. So we're really excited. It's been very good.
That sounds like a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So first, that's awesome. Lots of people talk about doing things, buying real things in the world, and using that to provide opportunities and places to live for our folk and our people who could make use of those. That's a beautiful thing, and it's a testament to the kind of person you are, and it's something that hopefully inspires others to do similar things. It's hard to keep up with all the generosity because you guys are amazing. Our producer Nick donated $200 to help us pay off Njord's off, and John in Indiana also donated $200 to help us pay off Njord's off. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it, both of you guys. That's a lot tonight. We have raised somewhere in the $1,300 range in 2.5 hours to help pay off the Hoff. Yeah, thank you guys. I just continue to be amazed. You guys are awesome. We are making tremendous progress on that. Dude who asked earlier. Oh no, that was in a previous chat before the show. We had somebody asking realistically how soon before we can get Phrasehoff. What he asked, what he asked originally actually was, what are the odds of us getting Phrasehoff by the end of the year? And I told him it's not impossible, but the odds are slim. What I am very confident of is that we can pay off Njordshof by the end of the year. But once we pay off Njordshof, then we get into the finding the right spot, doing the inspections and the offers and the whole buying that spot process with Phrasehoff. So it's ambitious to think of that by the end of the year. However, if we get folks donating like y'all have been tonight, as soon as we clear the Njordshof debt, we will definitely be immediately trying to find the right location for Phrasehoff. It is absolutely possible to get it this year if people continue to help us accelerate the momentum of paying off Njordshof. So we'll see where that sorts itself out, but we have made amazing progress on that so far tonight. You guys are beautiful, and I appreciate it so much. Let's see, we got some more questions on here. Let me find where we were at because they're getting lost in all the awesome donation notifications for me. So here you go. In my research, a majority of Western and Northern Europeans followed the Celtic gods rather than the Germanic ones. Why is the focus on the Germanic ones? So we talked about this a little bit earlier too. There are a variety of reasons. One, the Celtic material is not nearly as comprehensive or as complete that's come down to us. Another one that I think probably plays into some of them the Celtic material is simply not very well known to most of our folk as a whole, whereas the basics of the Norse material is, at least the points of familiarity are much more. And then there is the more overtly supernatural reasoning, because that is what the Aesir have put forth to us. That's what the mission that has been laid before us is. A lot of people wonder, well, what if we had like a Celtic thing that was like Asatru but Celtic? Or what would it be like if this? And those are all fascinating questions, and I like to wonder about what if too. But it pales in comparison to what did happen. What did happen over a couple of consecutive waves in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, and undeniably and overwhelmingly in the 1960s and 70s. The Allfather, under the Norse conception, with Norse terminology, with Norse inspiration, chose to ignite the soul of our folk, to reclaim our troth and our loyalty to the Aesir. That was done under these terms, with these associations, and in this way. That is what awakened our folk soul. That is what brought us back home to relation with our gods, to troth, to loyalty. It was as Allfather Odin that the Sigfather chose and spoke to our founder, Alsherjar Gothi Stephen McNallen, way back in 1968, to put all of this into motion. It is under that conception and that corpus of lore that all of the different currents that have coalesced to get us where we are today, that is the shape it's taken. That is what has brought us to the dance. And that's what continues to facilitate our blessings through the gift cycle and our advancement in the development of Asatru. We could have done, it could have happened under a Celtic lens. It could have happened under a myriad other lenses and other shapes and varieties, but it did happen under this one. It did happen under this one, and we are into this as Asatru for 56 years now. And we are into this as the Asatru Folk Assembly very specifically this year for 30 years now. So it could have happened many, many different ways, but it did happen this way. And this is what we continue to build upon, to try and perfect to the best of our ability, and what is moving us forward and bringing us closer to a more perfect understanding and relationship with the gods. So that's where we're at. What do you think Universalist Asatru would say about folkish Yoruba? Would they have as much of a problem with that? John, respond to that if you would.
They would not, because they're cowards and charlatans. They, the thing about Universalist Asatru is that they aren't Asatru, and they don't really exist for the most part. I have not noticed them being particularly religious or pious. They exist primarily to be anti-Christian, and to feel special, and to promote political ideology. They are terrified at the thought of applying an even-handed stroke to the Yoruba or the Shinto or the American Indian religions, all of which are with possible exception of Yoruba, are larger than Asatru. And yeah, no, they not only would they get terrified to confront any of those groups. I don't know. I want to denigrate them while still using high language. So I don't know. They're screaming communists for the most part. They rarely have a coherent argument.
So first, before we do that, a Salem 8 from Rumble donated $5 to us. It says, hello, cheers. Cheers to you, a Salem 8. We appreciate you. We appreciate your donation. We appreciate you listening to and watching the show and participating with it. Thank you for being here. Secondly, I reject your question because there's no such thing as universalist Asatru. The two are mutually contradictory. You can't do those two things. So the dishonest and mentally ill charlatans that claim to be both universalist and Asatru are not loyal to the ICER. They are, as John mentioned, raving communists. And I don't just say that as a like a political slap at them, although I mean gladly I would say it as that. But one of the things that was very apparent to me when I first came home to Asatru in, let's say, there's debate on this because it was processed. Very few things happen in the blink of an eye. But in, let's say, 2001, one of the things that I noticed, because back then there was a number of competing groups that were all, had some degree of parity as legitimate options to try to see what this Asatru thing that I learned about is. At the time, there was the Asatru Alliance, there was the Odinic Rite, there was the Troth, and there was the Asatru Folk Assembly. One thing that I noticed, the Troth's website, you had to scroll way down, like 3 pages in, to get to anything positive they were about. When you looked at, like, about us, it didn't say, hi, we're Asatru, we love the ICER, we worship our gods, we are about whatever. We do not tolerate any homophobia. We will not accept any racism or any problematic language. We do not accept anybody who discriminates on the base. There's this whole list of all of the things they don't like and they don't accept and they won't tolerate. And it was defined by it was front loaded, defined by their politics. And it's only gotten worse over the last 20 years. But not only that, but their politics expressed in a very negative way. It's not about us, didn't tell us about them. It told me about all the people they weren't instead of who they were. In contrast, at the time when I went to the AFA's website, and we've tried really hard to continue that to this day, it was all about what the AFA was about, the values the AFA shared, the beliefs that the AFA had. It wasn't all the things they don't like or all the people they don't agree with or don't approve of. It was defined positively. And yes, positively, I think, in terms of values, but I mean positively in terms of language. It was a positive statement about the things that we support and who we are, in contrast to negative statements about who we aren't. And I've seen that metastasize in the Universalist camp. We've all seen that. I mean, if you're a regular viewer of the show, the spiral, it seems as though every year that has gone by in that camp, whatever grouping or, internet chat room they associate with, it has been progressively, pun intended, I suppose, maybe not pun intended, but pun accepted, less and less Asatru, less and less about anything related to the gods, and more about extreme left-wing degenerate politics. And it's really, really disgusting. But yeah, no, they wouldn't care about folkish Yoruba. They actively just hate heterosexual white people. Their board of directors has become increasingly gay to where I believe it is, at last time I checked, over 50% gay. There's a black lesbian Lokian that was there last time I took any note of it on their board of directors. A lot of the board of directors at that time, Asatru was like the third thing down on the list. They're also a Wiccan high priestess. They're also a, level 18 necromancer. There are all these different things. And then they're at some point on there, they claim some degree of loose affiliation with Asatru. And yeah, that's gross. Those people don't count. And yeah, but no, they wouldn't apply that standard to any other group of people. They literally just are self-loathing in their hate for white people and outwardly loathing in their hate for heterosexual people and traditionally minded people or people who practice good personal hygiene and have good mental health.
Can I add one thing to that?
You may.
Just a consideration is that what a perfect organization they really are, and it's, it sounds humorous, but we often blame their politics for why they are so degenerated and why they continue to degenerate, but they really actually are a perfect theological kind of macrocosm of what happens when you are Lokian. So we eschew these things, this Lokian mentality. And I mean, really, if you are going to start a religious group that accepts Loki worship and champions it, you will become that which they are. They are a very reasonable byproduct of the Lokian troll wife, just degenerate twist on everything that we who are Asatru are.
A couple of notes to that I think are true and are relevant here. You have two things. You have the people that are actively super into that and the instigators of it. And that's one phenomenon. But then you have well-meaning people that suffer from the soul sickness to where they are toxically need to be nice to people, even if those people are really bad, and need to be accepting. And they're trying so hard to politically fit in that they gradually allow themselves to degenerate and be rotted. The first group that you find with, somebody mentioned earlier the term rockatru, which isn't really a thing. It's like Christian raised goth Satanists. I understand there is a intellectual, philosophical Church of Satan thing that is about not really a deification of actual Bible devil, but like taking a philosophical position in contrast to that and whatever else. That's not what I'm talking about. The kids that pretend they worship the devil, they have a Christian social construct, and they've entirely defined themselves in opposition to whoever the antagonist. They've decided they are, or the protagonist. They've decided they are the antagonist to Christianity. They want to be everything that Christianity is not, just as a form of rebellion, because often they're deeply broken in that way. They just want to be, the pain in the butt opposition kid who's expressing their angst. When you see that in Asatru, it becomes Loki worshippers or Rokatru or whatever that is. Again, most of those people don't really believe those things. They just want to be edgy and spooky and, mommy doesn't understand me. And okay, that's what they're doing. There's other people that do have some sort of sincere belief that get tricked into some kind of neutrality or ambivalence and engage in, or at least allow and exist in the presence of Loki worship. And then you do see what John just mentioned about there is a spiritual decay that sets in when you knowingly open the door to and let chaos into your life or your practice or what you do. Over time, it rots it. Over time, it allows for an acceleration of entropy into a complete chaotic state. And I've seen this a lot with people that may not even intentionally believe, but they want to show how edgy they are and use real dark imagery. And over time, their life starts to get into the gravitational pull of chaos. And very often they either have extensive trouble pulling out of that, or they can't pull out of it together, and it leads to pretty severe mental illness and a breakdown of their family and their life and their health and a lot of things. So, beware of that. Don't get involved in that. That's bad. Where are we at? Gothi Rock recently reached the grandpa level of coolness in life. What has that been like for you?
That is going to make it difficult for me to hit on women with this video. But yeah, no. So, no, I'm a grandfather now. My daughter has she has a 3-month-old baby. Obviously, I think the baby's great because I am a grandfather, and that's a thing that we do. That's a cliche that I lean into. And she's pregnant again, and hopefully that pulls through as well. I guess to add a little meat to the story, this is a fun religious tale. So my daughter, she is a type 1 diabetic, and type 1 diabetics, when they get pregnant, they have a lot of problems, and there's a high rate of miscarriage. And she, unfortunately, her and her husband, they had that problem several times. And then they came to Ostara last year, not this most recent one, but the one previous. And they got married in the Hof. And some of the ladies, I assume led by Whit and Brandy, I wasn't there because I wasn't allowed to be there with the ladies, but they performed a fertility ritual over my daughter. And I bought her a little, fertility charm at an auction. And right after that happened, and we asked, for the blessing, she got pregnant, and it took, and now we have a granddaughter and another grandchild on the way. And it's I guess to some outsider it seems coincidental, but I mean literally a lot of problems carrying a child. And then as soon as this happened, and she'll tell you, my daughter, completely on board with this take of things. It just, the weird happens when you let it, when you acknowledge it. So So that's great. The grandbaby is great. Daughter's great. Husband's great. Everybody's doing really well. And the end. You know.
I'm very glad to hear it. I enjoyed spending a few minutes with your grandchild. Grandchild got fussy with me for a second. We had to I had it back. It happens. I will work on mending that. But that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with folks. And it's beautiful to see your daughter and your grandchildren and to see families in the AFA flourish is a really beautiful thing, and we're extremely blessed with that. So we have an interesting question here. Thoughts on other European pagans that want to work with and support somehow, such as Slavic or Celtic backgrounds? So there's a couple of things. Please, anybody listening to this, don't take offense. If you are in some other expression of Aryan religiosity and you are there in a traditional and sincere way, that's awesome. We appreciate if those people who do want to help or be involved. Excuse me. All right. So I was going to say, these suggestions are not as cool as I think people would want. I think people want some kind of, let's form some kind of unity rally, or let's do this, or no, what helps is everybody on here donating money. Donating money always helps. We've got a variety of causes that we raise money for, be it for Njordshof, be it for any of our future Hofs, be it for our folk that are struggling that need help from folk services, or be it our targeted fundraising to help our folk who struggle with horrific and intentional ethnic cleansing in South Africa. Money helps, but what else helps, and what I think the ultimate answer is, join the AFA and become Asatru in the way that you express your faith. I know that requires a paradigm shift in certain ways, but I think it is authentic. I think it does still honor our Aryan gods, and I think it does it in the best way, in the most authentic way, and that's how you help. Anybody who wants to support and help, that's how you help, is you get on the team. And we would love to have you get on the team. And there's probably really cool stuff we could learn from what you do and how you do it. Do you have any thoughts on that, John?
Not really any new thoughts. I mean, what's in a name, just come be Asatru. It's the modern iteration of the Aryan religion. I mean, that's,
yes.
You're trying to revive one branch of it because it's where you presently live. I get it. It's admirable. Your bloodlines are a lot older than that place that you're living. All of ours are. This is the one that, kind of what we talked about earlier, our pantheon, our gods speaking to our people via different manners. This is what they are currently doing.
Yeah, get on the team. One of the things that is just true, we accomplish and we are much stronger together. We are much stronger working together and as part of a unified church. We are much weaker and more insignificant the more we fracture into little idiosyncratic groupings. So get on the team, Doors open. We would love to have you guys. Vril Mage donated $20 to us on Rumble. Thanks for all the discussions. Hope Njord's Hoff gets paid off by early autumn at the latest. Bull run is here. So awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. I certainly hope it gets paid off by early autumn. I think that is extremely possible. I want to see how probable I can make it, and I want to see if we can get us there. And we will definitely try. And your donation helps. So thank you. Sorry, guys. I still do have to navigate a little bit here to get us where we're going.
I will say we've had our first 2 donations tonight from Rumble, so now I have to figure out how we get the money off there. So that's going to be fun.
Good.
I do know it's on the back end of Rumble. I see it in the transactions. So
I'm glad we've got a good Rumble audience following us tonight. That's awesome. Shout out to my people on Rumble. We appreciate you guys. And it's always good for Nick to learn new skills. We appreciate that.
I ain't failed yet.
Gotta find where I'm at. Sorry, guys. So IDK asks, any chance of expanding into Southern Maryland? We've got tons of members. Well, tons. We've got quite a few members in Maryland. We've got members all throughout Maryland. Yeah, if you are not one of those members in Maryland, you should join and get on the team. I was talking to, it's funny how some of these things kind of come full circle. We talked about Goði Rock's ordination at Thorshoff. Also ordained was Githya Heather Young. And Heather and I were speaking today about trying to get more activity in that area. What we really need is to get somebody to step up and want to folk build in the area. In a relatively small geographic area in, eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and in Northern Virginia, there got tons of people. Don't have a folk builder helping us get it squared away, but we do have some people trying to get our members there together more often and more effectively. And we've got quite a few members in Maryland. We just need somebody there hosting and getting stuff together. And as I mentioned, Githya Young is setting up some things remotely to make sure some of those moots happen there to get our members together, even if and until we get a folk builder in the area. So we absolutely got folks in Southern Maryland. We'd always love to have more. If you find yourself in that area and you are a heterosexual white person wanting to reconnect with the ICER, please join us. In the Asatru practice, how do you consider the Jotun/Etten, i.e. Loki, Aegir, Skadi, and Ymir? Devil's in the details, pun intended. The word Jotnar or Etten, it really is used for a variety of things in the lore, some of which are overtly malevolent, some of which aren't and just represent, ancient beings of power that are not necessarily or perhaps situationally aligned with the ICER. Yes, in general, the Jotnar are in opposition to the ICER. We certainly oppose Loki. The other's a little bit different. Aegir is a little bit obscure. There are some interactions with the ICER that are beneficial. There is hostility. We don't worship Aegir. But I don't think we find ourselves in some kind of an opposition all the time. Skadi, though Jotun born, marries into the ICER with her union with Njordur. We don't have any issue or problem with Skadi. She comes into alliance and becomes part of the ICER. And Ymir is that element of primal chaos that is broken down to shape the world of order and the world of beauty. Certainly not on the team. Most of the Jotnar that you encounter in the lore are, the in opposition to the Aesir, and thus we stand against them because of our loyalty to the Aesir. But there's special occasions, and it's a term that gets overused, so it's not, it requires a little bit of discernment of reading the lore, and you can see who is in opposition and who is has allied themselves and become in harmony with the Aesir. I know that's not a pretty answer, but it is the honest answer, and it is what's self-evident when you read the lore in its totality. Question: the myth of Loki being bound with entrails and snake sounds like a binding ritual. Could effigies have been treated as him in a ritual so as to protect the tribe against nithings and winter? John, take that one.
Could, the answer is yes. I mean, who knows what has happened in dark forests over the thousands of years. I am not aware of any evidence of such a thing, such a specific thing happening for such a specific purpose. Again, it's one of those things when we're taking the myth and we are extrapolating from it to think of how we could use it. Did someone in Swabia at one point decide to try that out? Yeah, probably. I mean, maybe. I don't know exactly where to go with that question. I mean,
no, you're keeping it real. You're doing the right thing on answering it. Yeah, of course. And I think that, so we're getting it from on the poster of the question, finding all these points of connectivity is really good, and there is value to that, and it's awesome, and I appreciate the questions that you ask quite a bit. I'm glad you ask them. I hope you keep asking and ask more. Certainly that could happen, like John said, but we have no reason to believe that it did happen. And this isn't pointed. Nah, it just is what it is. Anyways, sure. And we know that sometimes there is ritual drama or whatnot. There's a lot of ways that you could ritualize something to be reminiscent of that in a way to stave off bad things. But there's no reason to believe it was ever used that way. And I don't know anyone who's ever done that. And I don't know that there is a reason to do that. Yeah. So, I mean, sure, of course somebody could. But I have never heard of that being done. And I don't see a compelling reason to do that over any other simpler ways to try to ward off bad stuff.
I would suspect that it's not been done, because when I consider it, I guess the best way to look at that question is to think, would I do it? And then our ancestors probably would have thought the same way. The binding of Loki is a reactionary punishment. I mean, if you're wanting to ward and protect, why don't we just go with the known wards and protectants? Like, you do the Thor warding. I mean, he is the aggressive, proactive protection of something. I feel like if you're trying to do a drama of Bound Loki, you're almost inviting the bad thing to happen, but just letting it know that you'll avenge it
I
but-
mean, if you're in a spot where you are administering justice and your method of doing so is tying somebody up and dripping acid on their face, I mean, it makes sense as you taking that and trying to cross apply it, but I've never heard of that being done. And I think that's a really long, drawn out way of doing stuff that may make much more sense when it's a god upon another god in a mythical plane, and there's much easier and more efficient ways of administering justice in a society to where you have that power to do that. Is it acceptable and or encouraged for AFA members to worship their ethnic gods in private while also worshiping the Aesir in group rituals? Say someone is Eastern European, can they worship the gods in their Slavic form in private to better connect with their Slavic ancestors? Sure. Is it acceptable? Sure. If that's how you worship in your home, okay. Is it encouraged? No, it's not discouraged, but it is encouraged to bring your home practice and your traditions in line with the AFA traditions and to bring what you're doing into an ever closer harmony with what we're all doing. And that goes back to kind of a theme that we've talked about this evening. The more all of the elements of your practice or all of the elements of your life harmonize and work with one another and sync up, the healthier and more effective you are at life and at your connection and at all of the things you're trying to achieve. Because synergy is just that. All of the pieces working together develop a combined momentum or potency that's greater than the sum of their parts. The more you do and segment things in your life in ways that don't quite match up, the less effective harnessing that bonus synergy momentum I think that you are. Again, that's not wrong. It's not bad. It's not verboten. But the closer that your personal practice is with AFA practice, the better we all are able to align our spiritual potency and direct it towards a goal. If that's helpful. Is the ubiquitous jadeite stone axe/hammer at all related to the later Indo-European axe/hammer wielding thunder god? Always wondered that. The Indo-Europeans did not come from the Stone Age, or did come from the same Stone Age groups. John, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't pretend to know, but I would think so. I mean, our religion is that old. I think a lot of people, when they consider our religion, they are considering it in the modern antiquity, I guess. But no, I do believe that we had the worship of a striker god in the Stone Age, and so it is reasonable that we were fashioning hammers out of, or striking implements out of what we saw as rare and precious stone. I can't say definitively, but
there you have it, folks. Sure, what John said. So I tend to think so too, but without having some kind of more extensive deep dive into that. I don't want to overspeak, but yes, the striker marriage between earth and heaven deity is one of the oldest attested expressions of deity amongst our folk. I would not be surprised if that connection is expressed in the ways that you mention. In fact, I would think that it is until I have reason to believe otherwise. And yeah, our folk, our faith, and our people extend back certainly into the Stone Age. They extend back into the Ice Age and beyond. And so those points of connectivity exist in the very, very distant past. In fact, when you go to, I've been really blessed in my time in the AFA. I've been to Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, and done rituals in each of those countries in stone circles and amongst sacred sites. And those stone circles and sacred sites aren't Viking stuff. They're Neolithic things. The dolmens and that culture in Europe is Neolithic. It predates the Viking Age. It predates the quote unquote Celtic period. They are absolutely Asatru sites, but they are much older than the expressions of culture that archaeologists have given those different names to. All right, so Tyler in Virginia donated $10 towards paying off Njordshof. Thank you so much, Tyler. It's much appreciated. Everyone has been shockingly generous this evening. I figured you guys would be able to help out because you guys are amazing like that, but I am blown away about the amount of you guys answering the call and in such a really big way. This is huge. We'll run percentages and see how much percent we've paid off here shortly, but we've made, like I said, we've made well over $1,300 ish progress in just a few short hours because you guys are amazing. I am very deeply thankful for it. John, it has been an honor to have you on the program tonight. We're very proud of you. We're very proud to have you amongst our priesthood. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for being a guest this evening. And we are excited to see all of the amazing things that we will do together in the future. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir. It's a great honor to be here.
This just in, we have raised $1,445 in the last 3 hours and 13 minutes because you guys are fantastic. I love you guys, and I'm very, very appreciative. Next week, Witten Svan and I will go into part 3 of the Volsunga saga. I hope y'all are enjoying it. We are. There is a lot of material to cover, but it's really important. It's something we really enjoy, and it's something that I hope is very beneficial to everybody listening. We look forward to seeing you guys all then. Till then, hail the Aesir, hail the folk, hail the Asatru Folk Assembly, hail Hauken Jarl, hail Stubba, and remember, victory never sleeps.